Hi there, my name is Angel, and I'm a program manager on the Microsoft MakeCode team. Thank you for joining me for this session, which is all about translations for the microbit platform. Being able to provide multiple language options for our product is so important to us, and I really appreciate your time. In this video, my colleagues and I aim to provide clarity on our translation processes by talking through our resources, how to begin, and give a demo of a sample process. I'll be joined by two colleagues, Emma and Daniel. Emma is the Translations and Donations Manager for the Microbit Foundation and does an incredible job providing support for our volunteer translators. She will primarily be talking through the translation content on microbit.org and providing information on how we support our volunteers. Daniel is a software engineer on the MakeCode team and has been a keen supporter of translation since the first day he joined the team. He is additionally one of our Crowdin volunteers and has spent his free time providing us with translations into Mexican Spanish. He will be talking through how to translate MakeCode resources, things like the editor, the blocks, the lessons, and documentation, and will also give a demonstration of a sample process. I've provided the time codes for the beginnings of all of our key sections on the screen. They'll also be provided in the video description. All right. Let's get started. Translations are a key piece to increasing accessibility for microbit users across the globe, and we use the Crowdin platform to provide language support for our users. You've probably been noticing that I've been saying the word volunteer a lot. That's because most of our translations are provided by people around the globe who have been incredible about volunteering their time to help us translate and proofread. We could not do it without them. Now, I'm going to hand the mic over to Emma, who will provide you with some information on our translation resources, how to navigate our translated pages on microbit.org, and how you can help.
Hello, I'm Emma, Translations and Donations Manager for the Foundation. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to sharing the Foundation's translation program with you. In this session, I'll introduce the content that we translate for microbit.org, the MakeCode editor, and also how we support our volunteers. We're working hard to make microbit resources available to as many teachers, educators, and students as we can all over the world. We rely on an amazing community of volunteer translators and proofreaders to help localize microbit.org and the microbit's official editors, MakeCode and Python. To help publish new translations as quickly as possible, we've identified a set of pages which form our essential content for teachers package. In order to publish a new language on microbit.org, as a minimum, we translate the MakeCode projects, other essential pages, and create subtitles for some of our supporting videos. For MakeCode, we translate the UI, blocks, and basic help documents to support the microbit editor. We're confident these resources will provide teachers, educators, and students plenty of support to get started and progress on their microbit journey. We aim to translate this into as many languages as we can, and there are currently over 120 language projects open for microbit.org and MakeCode across the Crowdin and Amara platforms. Some other parts of microbit.org and MakeCode are still available for translation in Crowdin, but these don't form part of the minimum benchmark for publishing. And in some cases, they might be published a bit later on. The easiest way to find out if a page is available in your chosen language is to visit the page you want and select the language menu drop-down. This presents all of the language options available for that page. You can then navigate through the website as you usually would. There are some parts of microbit.org which we don't plan to translate at the moment. Our news pages, for example, or the impact pages. In this case, if you're on the French projects page and clicked through to the impact page, you'll see that it defaults to English. And if you look at the language menu, you'll see there are no options available. However, as soon as you visit a translated page again, the option reappears. We know this isn't necessarily the ideal way to navigate through the translated pages, but doing it this way has allowed us to publish the translations quickly so students can begin using them while we look in more depth at the user journey for our translated resources in the long term. We also have subtitles available in some languages for our supporting videos. It's easy to change the subtitle language. All of the available options can be found by clicking the settings cog on the right-hand side and choosing the subtitle option. If this is of interest to you, or maybe someone you know, here are some ways in which you can support our translation work. It doesn't matter how much or how little time you might have to contribute, we're always happy to welcome new volunteers. And new volunteers are supported with articles in our knowledge base, a dedicated Slack channel, and I can be contacted within the Crowdin editor and the Foundation support desk too. Please do tell people about our work, share the news of this project with people or organisations who you think may like to support. We work with large organisations and coordinate teams of volunteers in the same personal way that we work with individual volunteers. We also have a translations community Slack channel, and this is a great place to chat with fellow volunteers and ask any questions about their experience so far. The languages you can see in the table on the left-hand side are the ones which we're focusing on at the moment. So if you're able to offer any support with those, we'd love to hear from you. But don't worry if you can't see your preferred language on this list, because there are plenty of projects in other languages available in Crowdin now. Saying thank you is really important to us, and the work that we do is made possible by our amazing community of volunteer translators. We're delighted to recognise volunteer contributions in our volunteer newsletter and on our social channels. And we will also soon be introducing a rewards programme as another way of recognising and rewarding everyone's hard work. For more information, please visit microbit.org/translate or contact me directly. Thank you for joining me today. It's with your help that teachers and students all over the world can learn with the microbit in their chosen language.
I wanted to now talk about the translation process. On Crowdin, we have two types of contributors, translators and proofreaders. Translators provide the first step in our process and provide us with suggestions for how to translate our content. Once those suggestions have been provided, our proofreaders go through and approve, deny, or comment to learn more about the suggestions. In other words, proofreaders determine what our final translations are. If you want to be a translator, I've included a link in the description for you to get started. If you want to be a proofreader, I ask that you send me or Emma information on yourself and resources like your LinkedIn and resume so that we can get to know you a little bit better. While we offer many languages to be translated on Crowdin, not all of the languages appear on makecode.microbit.org. This is because we require some level of translation to be completed before we enable a language on our site. This typically means at least 85% translation completion of a few of our key files that comprise 3 key parts of each language. 1. The editor UI strings. 2. The core blocks, which are loaded with the default project. 3. Additional blocks, such as servo and some of the microbit-specific strings for things like downloading code onto the device. What files does all of this entail? Well, if you navigate to our Crowdin site and are a translator or proofreader, you can click on the Content tab to see our translatable files. On the top level, there's a strings.json file, which is one of the most important ones to translate. If you then expand the microbit folder, you can see a lot more files with the suffix -strings.json. In general, these are the files you want to translate to 85% plus completion. One of the most important of these files is the core-strings.json file. This contains the core blocks loaded in with the default project. At this point, you may be finding all of this to be a bit complicated, and like it requires a lot of knowledge of our file structure. If so, please don't be discouraged. We have at least 2 features that can possibly help. Firstly, we have an alternative option of in-context translations. Daniel will be giving a demonstration of this functionality later. But in general, it consists of using a special mode to translate directly and visually from our site. Another feature that we utilize is crowd-in tasks. Crowd-in has a tasks functionality in which you can create and assign tasks to get files translated or proofread by specific members. We have set up our tasks to help our volunteers locate the files easily. If you are a translator, please drop Emma a message if you want us to assign you the task to a task for a specific language. I want to talk now about some really important guidance for translating. If you need a refresher on any of these, they are provided at makecode.com/translate. Let's start with the rules on what to avoid. Do not capitalize words in blocks. 2. Generally, you should not translate any % variable or $ variable names. If you're not sure, leave a question on our forum. 3. Do not reorder parameters. 4. Maintain the same order and spacing of all pipe and % variable names in the block text. If there are names with special characters, such as $, %, or $, in the block strings, leave them untranslated. These are parameter names and need to remain as they are. Also, the pipe is a separator character and is not translated. Additionally, any text inside a squiggly bracket should not be translated. Let's talk now about tutorials. Tutorials are markdown pages that follow a very specific format. This is so the tutorial engine can read the individual sections and build a proper list of steps for them. Be aware that there are some macros that are unique to tutorials and should not be translated. Some examples of these are @ full screen, @ unplugged. Another aspect of the MakeCode tutorial markdown format is that we provide block highlighting. In other words, a way to highlight text in a way that looks like it is appearing in a block. This helps us give our tutorial users a visual way of identifying blocks or categories we are trying to point them to. When shown in the tutorial content panel, the text is highlighted with the color of the block category it is a part of. The format of a block highlight in our documentation looks like this. 2 pipes, the category the block belongs to, a colon, the text itself for the block, and 2 more pipes. Here is an example of how a for loop might appear. Thus, the text you need to translate is the string that comes after the colon. So for here, the word for. Alright, now that we've talked about tutorials, let's move on to the process of publishing new translations and seeing them live. Once a translation is approved by a proofreader, it is published to the live website for MakeCode.com or the target editor. There's a scheduled process which checks for new translations in Crowdin and brings them down to the corresponding website. There's a period of delay from when a new translation is approved and when it will appear on the site. This is generally between 10 and 30 minutes. If you want to test your translations live, you can use the in-context translations feature to fetch the most recent translations available in any language directly from Crowdin. Finally, what happens if you come across something that doesn't smoothly translate into English, from English into your language? If you're a translator, we ask you to try your best. If needed, you can also provide multiple options that your proofreader can choose from. If you're a proofreader, we ask you to please maintain consistency. If you are unsure at any point, we encourage you to pause and ask questions, and leave comments directly in the comments section for any string you're trying to approve. Additionally, like Emma mentioned, there are a few areas where you can confer with the community, including directly messaging the Crowd and Discussions tab, or our Slack channel. Thank you for all of your engagement and help. We really appreciate your time and effort. With that, I'll turn the mic over to Daniel.
Hello, everybody. I'll be showing you today a little bit about our crowd-in translations in the Microbit MakeCode editor. So there's two ways that you can go about doing this. The first one is what we call in-context translations, and that's the easiest one, which kind of shows you a little bit of the context that surrounds things like the blocks, which makes translations a lot easier once you understand what we're trying to say, what we're trying to convey. So in order to get started there, you'll want to click here on language, and then at the very bottom of the language selection, you'll click on Translate the Editor. You'll want to register and be accepted to the project. And if you want to be a proofreader, Angel also shared instructions on how to do that. So you'll want to click here on Translate. And the first thing that you'll see is you'll get to choose your target language. There's a lot more available than the ones that we have enabled. So you'll want to choose the one you want, and then you'll hit login or sign up. Once that's there, you'll be able to see the project in Spanish in this case. So we'll want to go in, and sometimes strings take a little bit longer to load. Those are things that we know happen, but don't worry too much about that. If you reload or wait a little bit, you'll see that it starts loading. So in this case, we'll want to click here on music, and then we'll see that there's a bunch of different ones that haven't necessarily been translated. So let's take these ones and this one as well. Two different blocks. One's pretty easy. One's just one word. One has a variable. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to right click and then click the last option, which says translate this block. Once you get that option, you'll see what the translation is. And if there's nothing, it's in red. You'll want to click this little icon right here. You'll get the original word, and then you'll want to translate it here. What's great about crowd-in is that it suggests some words down here. So in this case, it's one easy word, so it's a lot easier. But you'll want to make sure that capitalization is congruent. So in this case, we'll just choose volumen, we'll hit save, and once that's saved, you'll see that it still needs to be approved. In my case, I'm a proofreader, so I can approve my own suggestions. So I went ahead and did that, close that, and now if I refresh the page, we should see that the block has been translated. Great, so that's done. So now whenever we want to add it, you'll see volumen, and anyone that's in that language will see it. In this case, set volume to 127. Let's do the same thing. And now you'll see that we have a variable, right? So as mentioned by Angel, you'll want to leave that. And we have two different translation options here, or suggestions. So here's where things get pretty interesting, right? So some people want to say it this way, some people want to say it this other way. So let's say I want to do it this way, right? So establecer volumen A, and then the percentage variable, we leave the same. We're not translating that one. So we'll want to save that. And then let's say a few minutes later, a few days or whatnot, someone else goes ahead and suggests this other thing. And it can even be yourself, right? So you can suggest both or however many suggestions you want to give us. So you'll want to hit fijar volumen, leaving the same variable, hit save, and you'll see that we have two different options. So now it's up to the proofreader to decide which one's the right one, or which one we would like to maintain consistent among the other blocks. In this case, I know it's this one. We'll just leave that one as an option. So once we close here and close here, we are able to refresh. So this is the in-context translation. Hopefully that's clear for you. So the other type of translation is going to the site itself. So, for example, let's say we would like to translate a tutorial, and these are the ones that we need the most help with. So if we start the tutorial, you'll see meet your new pet hamster Cyrus, right? And you can navigate through the options. The best way for me, how I've been doing it, is I'll click a string in the tutorial. I'll go to the Crowdin website. Once you log into the Crowdin website and go to the KindScript project, which is a MakeCode project, this is a little bit of what you'll see. You'll see all the languages available. We'll want to do Spanish in this case. We'll hit it here. And now it usually takes a little bit. We have a bunch of different files here, so be patient. And in this case, our target is going to be microbit, right? So what we want to do is, we know it's going to be here, but we have no idea where all this stuff is, right? So the best way to do it that I found is I'll get this string called Cyrus is a very sleepy hamster. And now you can go back to the page itself, go to content, go to strings. And again, Cyrus is a very sleepy hamster. We want to do the minimum amount of string that's available without having something super generic, like just one word, right? So we'll want to search that. Cyrus is a very sleepy hamster. We come back with one result. We click edit. And now we see where this file is located. So it's under microbit docs project, v2 pethamster.md. So it's a markdown file. That's how we keep most or all of our tutorials. We'll want to go back to files, actually home. When I go home, select the language we want to translate it to. And now we can navigate to the file. So we can either navigate if we recall what all the folders were, or we can just filter the files up here. We know it's called v2 hamster. So we click that. And boom, we get the whole file. So this is the markdown file that we get in order to show our tutorial. So again, it's pretty much the same thing as we saw on the in context translation. It's just that we won't see it in context right here. And it takes a little bit longer for us to be able to test this out. So you just have to be a little bit more careful, but it's once again the same thing. You'll want to make sure that you keep the variables and you translate just the words. So in this case, introducción add-on plug, right? So I'll type that. And actually, this is way easier if I just click it here and then I save it, right? And once again, waiting for some proofreader to approve it. I'll go ahead and approve it myself. And then the difference though is you can see as well over here, you'll see a lot of red strings, right? The green one is the one that's already that already has a suggested translation. And once it gets approved, it'll go into a darker green. So you can see the difference there. It's fairly easy. So now one thing that we'd like to go over is there's different blocks, right? And we mentioned that sometimes, or usually, we do not want to translate the block or the variable in the block. In this case, do not translate variables. It shows right as you hover on the word. So it makes it fairly easy for you to know which ones you don't want to be translating. But in this case, it's not a block itself that we're translating, it's the instructions. So those we want to translate, because if you're reading the instructions in Spanish, you'll want to see the correct block, right? So in this case, on logo pressed, if we go and just open a new web page that's translated, we can see what that block is called in Spanish, right? It does not have the variable in English. So what do we do on logo press? It came from input. So that's here. And this is the corresponding block, right? Al pulsar el logotipo. Completely different. We want to translate that one. So how do we do it? All right, so what we do is we can start translating this string. It's a little bit shorter, so the process will work a lot easier. So in this case, adherirlo en tu contenedor vacío, we want to keep these tags that just make the word bolded, as you can see here. And then the input stays in English. On logo pressed is what we want to translate. We want to make sure that we end with a period as well. So again, we want to translate it to al pulsar el logotipo, right? So that's what it translates to. So we'll just hit save and we'll get Crowden to complain, rightly so. So it'll say that the variable pressed has been translated just because we're on a markdown file and these are only instructions, not the block itself. We will hit save anyways. And this is where the proofreader needs to know, right? It's super important for the proofreader to know that this is being translated and it's correct. Right? So I'll go ahead and leave that as so that a proofreader can accept that if they think it's right. So yeah, so that's how you go about doing all these translations. And like I said, it's a lot better if you have different versions of how to say the same thing. You'll want to add different ways of saying it. So in this example, keeping with the same string, you can just say añadirlo, right? Or añádelo. Right? Now hit save. So which one makes more sense? It's up to the proofreader, and we want to just mainly keep consistency. All right, so those are the two different ways that you can translate, and then you can go back and open any other file, go back to the language selector, choose any other languages you might have. So yes, hopefully that helps give you a little bit of background and understanding on how to translate strings.